Yeah, boy, welcome back to Unstable TV. So we have another suggestion coming in from you guys. Now, this one is a bit out of the ballpark.
Ooh.
But before we get into that, if this is your first time on the channel, do not forget to
Like, subscribe, comment, share. Make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss anything. And if you're back with us again, thanks.
So what are we checking out today on Unstable TV, Danielle?
So today, James, we've been sent 11 things not to do in Australia. This is apparently a must-see before you go.
Will we ever go? Who knows? So let's watch this together. Let's go.
Australia is many things. It's a continent that makes up the 6th largest country in the world. It's some of the most dangerous creatures on the planet. And no, I'm not just talking about Australians. With a little over 8.5 million people visiting each year, tourism is a huge part of Australia's economy. That being said, there are a number of things to look out for when you're there. So let's get right into it.
Spiders.
Spooky bears. Oh, the cathedral you have to watch out for?
Okay. That's the Sydney Opera House.
Number 1.
Oh.
Don't stray from the path. With over 66 different venomous species, which is the 3rd largest concentration in the world, by the way, it's important to know where you are at all times. Now, this is especially true if you plan on trekking or camping in the outback. With things like the common brown snake, box jellyfish, and crocodiles, there's no shortage of dangerous animals here. So it's important that you stay on the path when you're exploring. And that goes for warning signs as well, because while it may seem funny to some people from different countries, here they're very real and should be taken seriously.
Okay.
That is a good point.
Noted. Don't flog the animals. It's a little kangaroos.
Number 2. Don't underestimate the cost. Australia is known for having one of the highest living costs in the world, and traveling there is no different. Now, of course, this is all subjective depending on where you go and where you're from, but it still might surprise you to hear that a beer costs around $9 Australian dollars, and a meal at a mid-range restaurant costs around 40. Now, all in all, if you're really trying to save money, you can get it down to around 100 Australian dollars per day. And I'll just throw that number out there as an average. But between transportation, food, and lodging, the prices can get a bit expensive. So it's important that you price out your trip accordingly. Number 3, and this is a short one. Don't say shrimp on the Barbie. Now, this phrase was popularized by a 1980s ad with Paul Hogan, who was later in Crocodile Dundee. And it was sponsored by the Australian Tourism Commission to try to bring in international travelers. But this is absolutely not what an Australian would say. If they would even use that phrase at all, they would say prawn, not shrimp. So don't make it more annoying than it already is.
That's fair enough.
So say put prawns on the Barbie.
Yeah, little prawn mills. That's coming out of that building.
It is.
Number 4, drinking in Australia. Now for this one, I'm mainly talking about major cities, specifically Sydney. So don't quote me on the rest of the country.
That's fair enough.
In Sydney, you can't get a beer after 1:30 in the morning because they have something called a lockout law, which means no one is allowed in or out of bars past that point in time. And their last call.
So they hold you in the bar?
And of course, don't drink and try and drive because they have one of the lowest blood alcohol content levels, 0.05, before you can be arrested. And last but not least, don't order Foster's beer. That's not an Australian thing, that's an American thing. Instead, try and order a bottle of Bundaberg. My Aussie friends will know why I'm laughing.
Wow.
Number 5. Don't underestimate its size. Australia is a country with about 25 million people, and because it's a continent, it's made up of almost 7.6 million square kilometers. And despite the fact that the majority of its population is clustered around the coasts, in urban areas, it still means that as a tourist, it's going to take a long time to get from place to place. So it's important to take a look at exactly how long it's going to take you to complete your itinerary. Number 6. Don't always tip. Now, unlike some countries, tipping isn't required in Australia, and that's mainly because their minimum wage is the highest in the world, at around $18.93 an hour. Now, in places like the US, waitstaff require tips to earn a living wage, because the national minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Now,
that's
if
awful.
You have great service, for sure you should tip the person. All I'm saying is you won't be scorned like in the US if you don't. Number 7. Don't rely on public transport. Now, because Australia is so big and so spread out, public transport is difficult to find outside major cities. It's not like Europe where you can take a train to a small town, hop off, and then hop onto another train to another small town. Australia is just too big for that to be feasible. So you're better off finding other ways to get around. Number 8. Don't talk about immigration. Now, forgive me if I have to generalize a bit in order to get the point across. But for the most part, many Australians dislike the way that the government handles immigration, whether they're anti-immigration or whether they're disgusted by the way the government handles refugees. Of course, there's all the people in between. But the bottom line is that immigration is a big deal in Australia, and it's easier to avoid the topic.
That's fair enough.
Number 9. Don't take anything personally. Now, Australians always seem to be joking around.
It's like Ireland.
Insults are one of the ways that they do that. But don't make the mistake of thinking they mean anything by it. There's a funny saying where you know that an Australian doesn't like you if they don't insult you, because it means that they actually think there's something wrong with you and that it'll offend you. Go figure. So take everything with a grain of salt.
So the Americans have a major hard time with that.
Yeah.
Number 10. Don't be afraid to say hello. Australians have a pretty well-deserved reputation for being laid back. And like I was talking about before with the kidding around, they're good at taking things in stride, which makes it easy as a tourist to make friends. And talking to people is a must.
Okay, you just decided to slide down the stairs.
Last but not least, number 11. Make sure you enjoy Australia. Australia
Of
is
course.
such a cool place with so many fun and interesting people. And there's so much to do there. It's important to keep in mind that these are all general guidelines and tips that I find out while I was there. And I'm sure you'll have a fantastic time while you're there.
If we ever go. So of course, a very big shout out to the original content creator. Do make sure you check him out, give him a like, subscribe and share and all that good YouTube stuff. And a shout out to you guys for sending this over. Australia has a bit of, it has a lot of feeling of Irish culture to it. Like certain topics to avoid, and if you're not insulted, if people don't insult you, they don't like you. Which is true. Irish people have certain ways like that as well. They say certain things to you, and Americans do get offended, but you have to explain that to them. But I think in more years, the Americans are starting to learn that the rest of the world, we don't take it all literal. I thought Foster's was their beer.
So did I.
Turns out it's American. So, yeah.
Whenever anybody talks about Foster's, it's always that Australian ad that everyone thinks of.
Yeah.
So that's why everyone's like, oh, it must be the biggest Australian beer. No, it's not.
Can anyone tell us why you took the bears out of the toilet? That could mean they're bad. And if we have anyone here in the comment section, have you been to Australia? What's it like? And if we have our friends that live there watching this,
What's it like?
and was this list accurate?
Ooh.
We'd love to go here one day.
Yeah.
So hopefully sometime in the future, we'll eventually get to go and see all the kangaroos and stuff.
Yeah, definitely some good tips there, especially about the public transport. Everybody just assumes public transport's going to be amazing in different countries. That's not always the case, certainly isn't for Ireland. And it looks like it's certainly not for Australia as well. So that's a really, really good thing to have to think about before you go and see Australia as a country. Make sure you keep that in mind. And the tipping thing is always good as well. Tipping culture is kind of becoming a huge thing now. So that's also good to know.
Make sure you bring some dollary bills with you so you don't end up starving or broke. So let us know your thoughts down below. That's been our 2 cents, and we will chop ourselves out as Down Under.
Did you redo?